Today marks the 45th anniversary of a rescue operation to retake a U.S. cargo ship, SS Mayaguez, that was captured by the communist Khmer Rouge. The operation led to a short but fierce fighting between U.S. Marines and the Khmer Rouge fighters on Koh Tang, one of Cambodia's islands off the coast of Sihanoukville. The battle that took place on May 15, 1975 has left 41 U.S. servicemen killed and 50 other wounded. I have spoken to Corporal Albeli, who took part in the battle and survived. He is now retired, but is still fighting another battle to get Vietnamese Service Medal for himself and others who took part in the battle for the very first time, but never considered as Vietnam War veterans. And also in the studio is Mr. Peter Maguire, researcher and director of Fanting Robin Foundation. Good morning, Mr. Albeli.
Morning.
How are you?
Fine. You?
Welcome to DC.
Well, thank you.
And also Mr. Peter Maguire.
Always good to see you.
Thank you for coming to always stop by VOA when you are in DC.
Absolutely.
I'd like to start this conversation with Corporal Albeli. You were a young serviceman 44 years ago in 1975 May, and it was your first battle, I believe, real battle, and you were sent there to Koh Tang in Cambodia. So tell me what happened on that day.
Well, I was on the first helicopter in, and we were briefed in Utapao that there was a small group of Cambodian fishermen on an island that the resistance wouldn't be that tough. The small force of fishermen defeat the Cambodian army. Well, ended up as a reinforced battalion.
The Khmer Rouge.
The Khmer Rouge.
On the island.
Yes, on the island. I was on the first helicopter coming in, and they waited for they were well trained. They did a good job. I was on the first helicopter. They waited till the helicopter just about landed, and they opened up with everything they had. And there was probably 200 or 300 rounds that went through the helicopter. Staff Sergeant Burnell told us to get the hell off the helicopter. So I took off. And 100 feet from me, there was two Khmer Rouge soldiers that were shooting at me. I turned and had to shoot both of them. I hit one center mass and hit the other one in the shoulder. Several of our guys got injured. The second helicopter was coming in, which was our commander on the next helicopter. I was on knife 21. Captain Davis is on knife 22. And they took all their gunfire because it was a bigger target on knife 22 and nailed the side of their helicopter. That gave us time to get up into the bush. If the other helicopter wasn't coming in behind us and they turned all their energy force because it's a bigger target, it allowed us to get up into the bush.
Okay. So it must be poor intelligence because
poor intelligence.
You were briefed that they were fishermen, but they were seasoned fighters.
They were seasoned fighters, yes they were, and the intel wasn't very good. They should have sent force ahead of us to find out what was there, but they did not. So anyway, we were able to get up into the bush. My helicopter was struggling to get liftoff. It dropped its external pods, went out to sea about a mile out and crashed in the ocean. The crew chief drowned it. He also got shot during coming in. But the helicopter itself, before I got off of it, we landed flat. We were all laying flat on the floor. It had bullet holes that went through it, and it was like beams of light all through it, different directions. There's 200-300 holes through the helicopter, but it was shot up so bad it went down. The captain's helicopter, the commanding officer's helicopter went back to Thailand and was so shot up. So we were stranded up on the beachhead. We were in the bush, but it was 20 of us against a reinforced battalion. That 1 hour before the next helicopter could land.
And most of them...
that hour lasted it seemed like it was a year long for that 1 hour before the next helicopter could come in.
Because most of them, as you said earlier, that in their late teens and kind of below under 20, and some in still the early 20s, right?
Yes, yes. We conserved our ammo, but the enemy, the Cambodians, they were firing on us heavily. The only thing we were pinned down right from get-go. I didn't fire very many rounds to conserve because we only had so much. So when that second helicopter came in, just before the second helicopter came in, we had a couple airstrikes that kept the enemy down to get that next helicopter in. And then the third one came in, and that's when Staff Sergeant Fufu Tutili showed up. Which changed the whole dynamics of the battle.
Yeah, and so the whole battle lasts only for about less than 48 hours, but
14 hours. 14 hours.
14 hours.
14-hour battle.
14-hour battle, constant battles, and 41 U.S. servicemen died on that operation, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Tell me about Staff Sergeant Tutili. You know, in my previous conversation or in other writing, you keep calling him the war hero.
Yes,
so
yes,
what did he do on that day? Please tell me.
Well, first of all, with the Marines, we were Marines. We were trained for battle. We weren't trained through our full cycle to go into combat yet. Our full cycle of training wasn't over yet, but the Cambodians knew that we were well-trained Marines. They knew that, so they could have overtook us in the beginning, but they didn't. I don't know why, but they didn't. So when Tutili showed up, Staff Sergeant Fufu Tutili showed up, he told my lieutenant and told us to spread out. He moved us out, gave us that confidence, and he was like an ironclad soldier. He was ironclad, and the First Lieutenant Keith told him to seize the machine gun position. Was over at about 10 on the 10 o'clock position, and he went up in there, and he told me and a couple other guys, if the enemy they come across the path here, nail them. So I was set up ready to get any of the ones they evaded out of this part of the jungle. It was a trail that went from West Beach to East Beach, and Tutili went up on the left, made a left envelopment and came in. In about 10 minutes, that machine gun position ceased altogether.
Really? So
10 minutes, and I understand it was a three-man machine gun team. That ceased. And then about another 10 minutes later, another position ceased. I watched them go in, and I watched them come out.
Staff Sergeant Tutili did all by himself?
Yes, sir.
Wow.
That was the first time. He went in twice. The second time he went in with a grenadier, a blooper gun, an M79 grenade launcher.
So is it safe to say that the result could have been different without Staff Sergeant Tutili, or you would not be here today?
That is correct. But he went in the second time with a grenadier and took out another position. He took out 3 positions. I watched it. I watched him go in both times. The first time when he came out and he had 2 AK-47s. He had boots. He looked like Santa Claus. And when the battle slowed down, right about the middle of the day, the enemy went and regrouped, We regrouped, and he was giving out
All
souvenirs from the enemy,
really?
like he was Santa Claus.
Yeah. So I believe this is the reason why you are here in Washington, D.C., trying to lobby Congress to give him a proper honor for
Yes,
this
sir.
medal,
Yes, sir.
congressional medal. Does it frustrate you that more than 44 years he still doesn't have, this honor as he should deserve?
I don't understand it, but I hope it gets hope it changes, and I hope he gets what the medals that he well deserves. I think he deserves a Congressional Medal of Honor. Myself.
Yeah. I did some research on this incident, and I will turn to Dr. Maguire later. From what I heard is the Khmer Rouge leaders have decided to release the ship already, and the battle should not have taken place if they learn about this. And now looking back at the incident 40 plus years later, what would be the good decision back then?
As far as us going in?
Yeah, the whole battle and the outcome. Life could have been saved.
The intel, if the intel would have been proper, it's a good possibility that none of this would have taken place. It was poor intel, basically.
Thank you. And Dr. Maguire,
Yes.
You've been working on this case for several years. Can you update me on the result? What is it? Where is it up?
Well, I first came across this case when I was investigating Khmer Rouge war crimes, in particular the Americans who were captured and sent to Tuol Sleng. In the process of finding the Khmer Rouge who captured them, it turned out they were the same Khmer Rouge who fought in the Mayaguez incident. So I had the Cambodian side before I had the American side. And basically, there were 3 Marines left behind. That was something very intriguing to me, that were captured after the battle, and something that I think was kind of hushed up at the time. I think what really stood in stark contrast to me was the bravery and heroism of the men on the ground, the men in the air, and the men in the sea, compared to our political leaders. They were failed by our political leaders. Recently, Donald Rumsfeld wrote a book about the Ford administration, and he's still calling the Mayaguez incident a great success for the Ford administration. So I think it's a time of reckoning for our political leaders to recognize these young men who served in combat after the official end of the Vietnam War. None of them have received any recognition for serving in combat in Vietnam. Yet the names of the dead and the Mayaguez are on the wall of the Vietnam Memorial. So this anomaly needs to be corrected. And it wasn't until I began writing about the Mayaguez from the American perspective, a young writer named Kevin Sheridan found Al, found Fofo Tetele, started collecting these stories that frankly amazed me. And so I went up and saw Al. We spent a very pleasant day together, eating crab at his house in Maryland and talking about different things, me showing him my interviews with the Khmer Rouge, what they said, what they told me. So we were both filling in pieces of the story that neither of us had. And the most striking thing was Fofo Tetele's really unsung heroism, and the numbers of people that came out in support of him with no urging at all. The writer Kevin Sheridan was able to get some of the men who served with Al, including Al, to write eyewitness testimony. I have a nonprofit organization called Feigning Robin Foundation. I help independent journalists, independent scholars, and veterans. So I used my foundation to begin putting the paperwork together to try to refile for a review of Fofo Tetele's case. It's the requirements for these medals are very stringent. I can't say which one he deserves, but he certainly deserves much more than he received. There's some evidence also that he was up for a higher medal, that it was reviewed by very senior people, which led me to believe this guy was already up for a higher medal. and they kind of sandbagged him. And so, these guys are not getting any younger, and I think it's time that they get the recognition that they deserve. And so I'm working with congressmen and senators and trying to get someone from New Mexico to refile the paperwork to get the case re-reviewed.
So where's the bottleneck? That's why it takes so long.
It's our very efficient government, which is running at its most inefficient peak in many years at the moment. We began to make some momentum, and then there was a government shutdown. They're running for re-election. They're constantly lobbying. So it's not simple, but I'm not known to quit, and I don't plan to quit. So
yeah. So, Corporal Bailey, a lot of research have pointed out that 3 servicemen were left behind, and they didn't die until a few days later, and there were preparation to also to rescue them, but call off at the last minute. And this experience still haunts some, have still haunted some servicemen. So how does this experience affected you personally?
I take it hard. Why them and why did I make it home and not them? As far as those 3 guys go, exactly what happened, no one knows. It's all speculation. It's all word from someone else. Did they die on line? Did they take them to mainland? Nobody's for sure about all this. But once after the bodies are recovered, if the bodies ever are recovered, then we'll know the truth. But my own opinion, yes, 3 guys were left behind, but they don't know exactly everything, and it's all pure speculation. And that comes not only myself, that comes from Dr. Gil Martin, a war historian as well, a professor at the University of Ohio, a good friend of mine. He retired as a colonel out of the Air Force, and he was a CH-53 helicopter pilot. So there's been several books written on this battle. I'm in the 14-hour war, but I've read a lot of it, and some of it's, pretty kosher, and then others is kind of speculations. So, but my brothers that were there, we know what happened. And I know that Staff Sergeant Fufu Titili deserves the Congressional Medal of Honor for what he did on that island, more so than he was more heroic. He's the most heroic man I've ever known in my life. He's the most heroic man that served in that battle, and he also was a sniper in Vietnam prior to that.
My respect to you, sir. But Dr. Maguire, the 3 names of the servicemen are on the Vietnam Memorial Wall, right?
yes.
But what kind of medal of honor they received?
Very little. Again, I think that the U.S. government at the time wanted to bury the Vietnam War, put it behind them, and prove that America was back. So not only did they not acknowledge what happened, they said, look, we decisively freed the ship. American power is back. We're not afraid to engage forces. Henry Kissinger was very much involved in the public relations campaign. And there is some evidence that, the Navy SEALs, Air Force pararescuemen, the Marines, including, I think, Titele, were prepared to go back to the island. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. So once again, the individuals on the ground, in the air, and at sea were very heroic. And somewhere up the chain of command, they were forbidden from returning to the island. And so who forbid them, we don't really know. It's speculation at this point. But there was a very heated discussion with the captain in his quarters about going back. The Navy SEALs were given sort of conditional permission to go on a suicide mission during daylight, broadcasting, their return to the Khmer Rouge, and they correctly and rightfully refused to do it. And it's a case that's still studied by the SEALs today about correctly disobeying bad orders.
Thank you. And what about you, Corporal Bailey? You feel that you have been honored enough for what you contribute to the mission?
Well, I wish we could receive the Vietnam Campaign Ribbon. We never received the Vietnam Campaign Ribbon. They consider us as Vietnam veterans, the last 41 names on the Vietnam Wall, but none of us that are alive received the Vietnam Campaign Ribbon. If you go to the Iwo Jima Monument, the curator there would tell you the reason why the Battle of Koh Tang is not on the Iwo Jima Monument. They consider us as Vietnam veterans. If you go to the Vietnam Wall and you ask the curator there, well, yeah, you're considered to be the last 41 names on the Vietnam Wall, but Congress and the Senate won't get off their ass and get that ribbon that we rightly deserve. It's all because of Congress and the Senate.
Thank you so much, Corporal Bailey and Dr. McGuire, for taking your time coming to VOA and share your story. Thank you, my appreciation and respect, sir. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.